Welcome to Industrial Voices, the podcast where leaders in manufacturing, e-commerce, and logistics share stories and insights on the trends shaping their industries. I'm Bradley Dunn, a commercial real estate broker specializing in industrial real estate across the Southeast. Let's get after it. Well, Stacy, appreciate you joining us today.
All right, glad to be here.
For another episode of Industrial Voices. I'll kick it off with a quick intro and then we'll jump in. But our guest today is Stacy Watson, Director of Economic and Industrial Development at the Georgia Ports Authority. Based in Savannah, Georgia, Stacy has spent more than 30 years with the Georgia Ports Authority, holding leadership roles in trade development and commercial development. He specializes in port operations, global trade, and business attraction, helping major manufacturers and distributors optimize their logistics strategies through one of the fastest growing and most efficient ports in the U.S. Georgia Ports is anchored by the Port of Savannah, the largest single terminal container facility in the country, and Stacy works every day to strengthen connectivity through inland terminals, rail infrastructure, and economic development partnerships. He is a go-to expert on global supply chains and U.S. port strategy, and we're excited to learn from today. So, Stacy, welcome.
Thank you. Are you sure that's me? You didn't get the wrong person? Yeah.
I believe so. Well, welcome. I'm really excited to have you here. You and I met, I believe, back in 2016, and I was blown away. We did the port tour. You showed us around. Your enthusiasm for the port, the subject matter, everything, like it shined through, really changed the way that I view what it is I do for a living. Right. And it's really possible that you don't even remember meeting me. Right? And so you had a huge impact on me. Yeah. And I wanted to kick it off by just talking through your path. How did you get into this line of work and what led you to your current role?
Well, it's interesting. I'm one of those rare people that I actually work in the field that I chose for in my major. So I was a logistics major, Georgia Southern. I wanted to get into the logistics field originally to go to work civil service for the federal government, for the Air Force. I'm from a little town called Eastman, Georgia. Not far from there is a town called Warner Robins, where you have one of the largest Air Force bases, Robins Air Force Base. But when I was about to graduate, Robins, was got on the BRAC list, base realignments and closures. I was like, what am I going to do? I don't want to go work at an Air Force base or an area that might close. One of my professors says, well, Stacy, I might have an opportunity for you. They have internships at the Georgia Ports Authority. So I took the internship. I delayed graduation so that I could do the internship. And that's my story. That was the summer of 1992. So I've been with the Georgia Ports Authority for 33 years this year. Wow. Does not seem that long. So in 1992, we would not have even been a blip on the radar screen for container ports. I think we had at that time 6 ship-to-shore cranes on the terminal. Now we've got 36. So
okay. And where would you say ballpark the Georgia Ports Authority was ranked in that? I guess the Port of Savannah,
God, probably 17, 18.
Out of 40.
And Charleston, was up there. Charleston was probably in the top 10 at that time.
And internationally, you don't even show up. Right?
No. We were a small port. But we were a mighty port. We had a lot of potential, and I've been fortunate to work with, leadership over the years that saw that potential and that took advantage of opportunities as they presented themselves, and even doing a good job of predicting what demand might be, 2, 3, 4 years out. Because in the shipping industry, if you wait until that opportunity comes to you before you start your growth plans, you've waited too late. So that's one thing I've learned from, my predecessors and our executive staff. You've got to continually grow, continually plan for growth. And that's worked out well for us. So, I've worked I started out in ship ops, then from ship ops to container operations to marketing to economic development. So, it's just like any other corporation. There are lots of opportunities for you to learn and to learn and move on and move up and do different things. So I've been very fortunate to have an operations background, operations experience, then moved into marketing and economic development for the past, I would say, probably 23 of those years.
So you've held pretty much every job on the port too.
I don't know about every one. There's some of them that I don't know if I'd want, but yeah, I've done a lot.
Well, I won't make you name which ones those are, but okay, well, this is a perfect transition. So shock the world for us. For those of you that are not familiar, when you think of ports, you may think of New York or LA or these major metropolitan centers.
Right.
Tell us where Savannah now ranks nationally.
Savannah nationally ranks as the number 3 gateway for international trade. When I say gateway, LA Long Beach would be the number one gateway. Okay. 2 separate ports, but 13 different terminals along the San Pedro Basin gateway. Then you have the New York, New Jersey gateway, which is 2 separate states, but 1 port authority. Okay. I think 6 or 7 different terminals, Port of New York, but the Savannah gateway, the Port of Savannah gateway is the number 3 gateway in the United States.
Which I remember when I learned that, it made my head explode, but that's incredible. So how do you rank that, right?
Right.
So is that container movement?
It's ranked by TEUs, 20-foot equivalent units. And, TEU stands for, ocean-going containers come in 3 different lengths, as you know, 20 feet, 40 feet, 45 feet. All this was standardized back in the 1960s by a guy named Malcolm McLean, and it worked out well to stuff different types of freight into something standard, a standard container versus break bulk, which is, non-containerized freight. So TEU stands for 20-foot equivalent unit. So one 20-foot container that you might see out on the road is 1 TEU, okay? A 40-foot container would be
2
TEUs. There you go. You're good in math. So we moved the equivalent this past calendar year 2024 of almost 5.6 million TEUs, which has us solidly in that number 3 position.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. And we're calling them 20-foot equivalent units and not 20 meter or 20.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's because we invented it, right?
Exactly.
United
You
States. There we go.
Go USA.
Little national pride. All right. What's the difference between containerized, break bulk, and ro-ro freight?
Okay. Containerized freight, again, freight that's stuffed into a standard 20, 40, 45-foot container. Could be just about anything, okay? So that's lifted on and off a ship with a ship-to-shore, container crane, and it's loaded onto a chassis. The chassis are independent of the containers. So that's containerized movement. A lot of the cans and the boxes that you see moving on the highway, that's containerized. Okay, break bulk is non-containerized freight. Okay, so it's the stuff that's inside that container. If it moved without the container, like it would be placed on a ship with a big hole and you lift it on with a crane that has a hook on it versus a ship-to-shore crane. And so that's break bulk.
That was prior to containerized shipping.
That was prior to containerized shipping.
Ocean freight, right?
Primary.
So that's all the longshoremen were moving actual stuff on and off.
Very slow, very labor intensive to do it. So, standardizing, stuffing that freight into, containers, and you had the same type of loading and offloading equipment at every port, just about every major port around the world, made it faster, safer, and more efficient.
And more secure too, right? Because there was leakage, right?
Exactly. A lot of leakage, a lot of opportunities for things just to affect safety, and affect productivity. What was the third one you asked?
Ro-ro freight.
Ro-ro,
which
okay.
is by far the silliest sounding one. But
Ro-ro. Ro-ro is roll on, roll off. Think automobiles, think construction equipment, things that have wheels on them that you can actually put on a ro-ro vessel. A ro-ro vessel is actually a vessel that is like a big rolling parking garage, a floating parking garage, if you would. It has either a quarter stern ramp or a ramp that comes down off the side or the back. You just drive the freight on and off.
And when I think of ro-ro, that's more so your Brunswick terminal, correct?
That's the Brunswick facility.
And you're bringing in the Kias and the BMWs and all those cars. Okay.
And we're actually the number 1 ro-ro port in the United States right now. So
are you? Okay. We should have led with that. We should have led with that.
Exactly.
Okay. So what role do ports like Savannah play in a typical U.S. manufacturer's or distributor's supply chain?
We are a link in their supply chain. Okay. We're that global connection to either their customer or that inbound, which might be the supplies or the parts or the things that go into making or manufacturing a part, a completed object or a completed good. So part of that supply chain, the global portion, and we load and offload the ships. We, have areas for customs to come and do the inspections and clear that container or clear that freight to leave the port. Once it leaves the port, it's either rail or truck to that, final destination.
Got it. All right. And then what are these are one of my favorite, or a couple of my favorite questions, but what are the primary goods being imported and exported through the Port of Savannah?
Imported, we handle a lot of retail goods, anything that you would go into Home Depot, Lowe's, Dollar Tree, Target, Wayfair. that type of freight is the majority that actually moves through our facilities. And it's I wouldn't say it's funny. It's kind of ironic. We're in North Carolina, the furniture capital of the world. Guess what our number one import is? Furniture. We import a lot of furniture. Might not be the type of furniture that you would, just go out and buy. A lot of it is the IKEA, the knockdown, the stuff that comes in boxes as well. So you got to think of that as furniture as well. So furniture, retail goods on the inbound side. Outbound, you're seeing a lot of commodities going out. Anything that is grown or produced in the Southeast. Anything you can manufacture from a Georgia pine tree or any pine tree.
I remember you saying wood pulp, right?
Wood pulp.
Would have never thought of that as being an export.
Paper products, forestry products. We export a lot of kaolin clay, which is a fine clay that's mined in the Southeast and in Georgia. It's used in many different. It's like the fine gloss, on porcelain and on the shiny portion on paper. It's even used. It was used in the past. This is an interesting fact in kale pectate. You familiar with kale pectate?
No, I'm not.
The kale portion of kale pectate is kaolin clay.
Okay.
So it had a medicinal use as well. In the past. I don't think it's used for that purpose anymore. But you see a lot of commodities going out. We're actually the top port for refrigerated containers in the United States. So lots of poultry is actually going out to ports all over the world and countries all over the world. So,
which isn't Georgia the world's leading exporter of poultry?
Exactly.
And so those containers are called reefer containers, right? Why are they called reefer? Is that like a Kleenex?
Refrigerated, not we're talking refrigerated containers.
Right.
Here. Yeah.
Okay. And then who are the Port of Savannah's biggest global trade partners, inbound and outbound?
Inbound, Asia.
Okay.
Both Northeast, Southeast, Southwest Asia. Those particular trade lanes are our biggest trading partners. Outbound would also be Asia, Middle East, and the Mediterranean. And an interesting point that you bring up with that, or a fact that I wanted to bring up, is that the diversity of trade lanes is one of our strong suits in Savannah. Okay. We've got trade lanes that we serve, our ocean carriers serve all over the world. We've got 38, 39 weekly vessel calls right now from different ports, from Asia via the Suez Canal, Asia via the Panama Canal, the Mediterranean, South America, Australia. So it's important that a port has diverse trade lanes that call that port, and it helps us in economic development, and actually helps you with business attraction for tenants for your facilities as well. Right now the world is going through a little bit of a change with sourcing. So sourcing is changing to different parts of the world. India is a country that we're definitely keeping our eyes on. Thailand, Vietnam, you're starting to see the market share for sourcing, for manufacturing go up in those areas. So that mix of inbound sources is very important for us. It's very important for our success in the future.
I hadn't thought about that. It's essentially like having if you're in the business world, it'd be like having one customer that's far too large.
Right.
So you guys have a diverse customer base, right? Okay.
Very diverse customer base.
Yep. And then talk to us a little bit about free trade zones. What are they and how do they benefit companies?
Okay. Foreign trade zones are actually areas that are around the port, within the port, even at inland locations that the federal government, U.S. Customs, does not count that freight as hitting the U.S. soil or U.S. economy yet, okay? Freight would come in to the port, go into a foreign trade zone, sit there and defer the duty. You don't pay the taxes on that particular item until it leaves that foreign trade zone. So you can defer duties that way. You can even modify, different things within that foreign trade zone. You can bring in parts and assemble those parts into a final product. And when it leaves that foreign trade zone, you pay the duty that's actually owed on that final product versus each individual part coming in. So it's good actually to have that option
And the goal
in
would
your
be
port
to
as well.
create jobs here
Create
to
jobs
assemble
here.
that. And I guess as I understand it, you have to substantially modify by 35%
Yes.
for it to become an American-made
About
good.
35%,
Okay.
exactly. And then if you re-export, you don't have to pay any duty on it, but you've created jobs in the U.S.
Okay. So it's essentially a way of making sure that tariffs and taxes and duties don't impact the jobs that could be created here.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense.
Perfect way to put it.
All right. Let me see. We got 2 more quick questions here on Ocean Freight 101, but how does ocean freight connect with inland modes of transportation like truck and rail? I know this, but I just want to hear you talk about it.
Well, on our terminal in Savannah, on our container terminal, okay, freight moves in 3 different modes. You've got ocean freight, you've got rail, and you've got truck, okay, for the majority. So in Savannah, we have both CSX and Norfolk Southern, the 2 Class 1 major rail carriers that have a facility, that have their intermodal facilities on our terminal. So we're loading trains for both CSX and Norfolk Southern on our terminal in Garden City, okay? And we also have truck lanes as well. We're doing about, right now, 15,000 gate moves a day, trucks in and out of our terminal. So, you've got direct connections with both rail and truck on our terminal.
Every one of those is going through customs too, right?
Every one of them
my goodness.
has to be cleared by customs.
Okay.
Customs doesn't inspect all of them. There's spot checking,
Yep.
and there are areas of concern. Like if you and I shipped a load of rugs in from, say, Turkey, they didn't know who we were, and it was
our
like
first time.
an area of interest that I can guarantee you something like that's going to be checked.
Okay, but if it's Target with their 35th container of rugs
exactly
for the day,
exactly. So it's a good connection for both rail and truck that we have. I mean, rail right now is about 20% of our business, and trucks are about 80%. Okay. So both are very important for us.
And so you were talking about the cost differential between truck, train, ocean freight. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit more about that. I don't have it necessarily written down here, but how does it stack up?
The least expensive mode of transportation, because of economies of scale, you move more freight per voyage or per mile with ocean freight, okay? But you're limited. You can't bring a ship to Charlotte. You know what I mean? Right. So the second least expensive mode is rail. Okay. And that's economies of scale as well. The more containers or the more freight that you have to move from the port to an inland location, the better the price. And it's moved more in a bulk, or how should I say it? It's moved in a volume. The more volume that you have, the more incentive that rail carrier has to negotiate with you to give you a better price. Okay. And then there's truck. Most expensive, but you get from point A to point B very quickly. You can go from the port to the ultimate destination, or you can go from the railhead to the ultimate destination. Last mile shipping, 99% of the time is going to be via truck. So most major customers use all 3 modes. And you do have a lot of customers also that use, just ocean freight truck or ocean freight rail directly to their destinations.
And then I guess there's also air, but we don't.
Yeah, there's air. There's also air. That is really the most expensive.
Yeah, that'll get you there by tomorrow, right? Yeah. So, and then the timing is important, right? Because what is from Hong Kong to the United States, if you're shipping via container, how long does that take?
It would probably be between 25, maybe 27, 28 days. Okay. I don't know exactly right off the top of my head, but it also depends on the number of port calls, that happen in between, Hong Kong and Savannah. But a direct from Hong Kong to Savannah, probably 25, 26 days.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then my last one is, what's your favorite fun fact about ocean freight?
Well, just the amount of investment that it takes to maintain an efficient port. Very, very capital intensive. The equipment, for one thing, the ship to shore cranes, they're between $20 to $25 million each. A lot of folks don't know how expensive that equipment is.
How many of these do we have?
On the terminal right now, we've got 36 at Garden City Terminal. And since we've talked last time, we've converted, or we're in the process of converting a second facility, our ocean terminal facility, converting that from a multimodal type of facility where in the past it was break bulk, ro-ro, and container. We're converting that to 100% containers. We've got actually 8 cranes there now as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. And when will that be completed, do you suppose?
2026, mid-2026.
So you're on track there.
We're on track. We're actually working some ships there now on a limited basis, but, it'll be completely finished. And they'll have capacity for about 1.6, 1.7 million TEUs by mid-2026.
That's incredible. Okay, so now moving on, let's talk Panama Canal. And for the people that don't know, the Panama Canal expansion that took place around 2016 is a huge part of Savannah and the Southeast story, and probably not something that, unless you're in one of our businesses, that you think about much. So talk to me about the Panama Canal expansion, and then you foreshadowed a little bit earlier how you all prepared for the growth that was likely to come from that, and then really what happened after that expansion.
Yep. The Panama Canal was a bottleneck, actually, for ocean freight. Ships then and now are getting larger, bigger, wider, stacking containers, higher on board the deck, all right, of the vessel. So the Panama Canal, 2016, went through their expansion, added a second set of locks, and were able to go from a Panamax, I'm pulling a number out of the air, pre, the expansion, a Panamax vessel might have been, 8,000 TEUs in capacity. Now a Panamax vessel is anywhere between 14 and 15,000 TEUs in capacity, depending on the configuration of the vessel. So when that happened, we expected it to be a slow, gradual process of larger vessels moving in from from Asia through the canal to the East Coast.
And previously they would have been calling on LA, correct?
Yes, they would have been calling LA. The majority of those, especially those larger ships, would have been calling on LA and doing what's called land bridge. LA, Asia, LA, railed east of, say, the Mississippi River. And 70% of the U.S. population lives east of the Mississippi River. So that was a lot of potential freight that could be moving through the Panama Canal, hitting Savannah, and serving that market. And again, we expected it to be a gradual increase, but it was almost like you flipped a switch.
You all ahead of time were dredging the ports, correct?
Yes.
So you saw this coming.
Yes, we did.
And what depth did you take it from and to?
We went from 36 feet, 38 feet to 40. Well, we went from 42 feet. When I first started, we were at 38. We went from 42 feet to 48 feet.
So you're taking an entire river, essentially, and lowering it by 5 to 6 feet. 25
nautical miles from open sea to our terminals, and then we had to go out into the channel, out into the shipping lane, I think maybe 7 or 8 different more miles, and deepen by an additional 5-6 feet.
And is that a depth that you're having to maintain, right? Is this like a project you have to revisit annually?
No, the Corps of Engineers, U.S. Corps of Engineers, that is their responsibilities to maintain the depth of the river at that, advertised depth. Okay. So we work closely with the U.S. Corps of Engineers to make sure they have the funding and the support to maintain the channel depth at 48 feet.
So if I can't put a little bridge over a river, it's because they're trying to maintain your bridge depth probably
Most
1,000 miles away.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Yep.
But, back to the Panama Canal, we actually saw almost an immediate increase in our business. I mean, we grew by, I can't remember the number off the top of my head right now, but it was in the double digits. The year that the Panama Canal expanded, double-digit growth immediately after that, and then continued steady growth. We had industrial developers, we had property developers come in, and they built spec buildings. At one point in time, our vacancy went up to about 20%. And that was a point in time. I had hair then, lots of hair. But, it's our job, as a port authority to help, the brokers and the developers and the builders to find tenants for those warehouses, because those are our customers, and we're glad to do that. But as soon or within 2-3 years of the Panama Canal expansion, that 20% vacancy went down to less than 1%.
Which is made all the more impressive by the fact that we didn't stop building down there.
No.
We came in force.
Yes. We were probably 30-40 million square feet at the time. Now we're
probably closer to 80, 90.
150, 160 million square feet.
Wow.
Within a 30-mile radius of the terminal.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. Well, I remember, and I was talking to you a little bit about the video that you had us watch. I think it would have been 2016 or 2017, but the first ship that called on Savannah after the Panama Canal extension, I think it was a Costco development, and that thing was massive.
Right.
And it wasn't only that you had dredged, but when the ship showed up, you guys were there with bells on, and you took every container move. I think you worked through the night. Like, you got it done fast and probably ahead of expectations, right?
Yes.
And I
As
think
we always do. Yeah.
And I think that showed the world that, hey, you can have, not only can you bring them through the Panama Canal, you can have them call in Savannah, not New York, but Savannah, and we're going to handle this and handle it effectively. And so I think for me, and the reason the port has played such a big part of my story, and I think the industrial real estate community story in the Southeast, is whether you knew it or not, it was affecting your day to day in a huge way. All of a sudden, all of this inventory and all this freight shows up, and it needs a place to go. And so I think, for me, it was a huge part of the story for the Port of Savannah, a huge part of my story, a huge part of the Southeast story. And it'll be interesting to watch what continues to happen. But
And you bring up a good point. Our port serves the Southeast. We call it Port of Savannah. It's in Savannah. We're the Georgia Ports Authority. Savannah's in Georgia. But our market is the entire Southeast. You look at population growth, okay? Where are people coming to live, coming to work? Southeast of the U.S. This is the fastest growing population region in the country. So, I'm sure that our reach extends far beyond the state of Georgia. We even have an inland terminal that we have in cooperation. We operate in cooperation with CSX up in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. You know where Rocky Mount is?
I do know where Rocky Mount is, yeah.
Right. It's called the CCX. Check it out.
There it is. I'll have to check it out. Well, and so you mentioned the population as well. And so Benoit Montrol is a guy who I met way back in the day. He was the chair of Coca-Cola Material Handling.
Right.
And he told me that every person that moves to Atlanta, or every person that moves to Charlotte, or pick one of these cities, has to move in 2 tractor trailer loads of freight per year for that person. And that's on average from baby to grown up, or to essentially a grandparent, right?
Right.
And when you first hear that, your knee-jerk reaction is that's wrong. But then I'm sitting here drinking a water bottle.
Exactly.
Right? We got these microphones,
right,
like the oil that they fried my Chick-fil-A nuggets in. Like, when you really start to add it up, it starts to make sense. And so when you layer in the population growth, and then you layer in the growth in containerized traffic at the port, like, it's a really incredible cocktail for the people that are in your business and my business.
It is.
It's really neat. All right, well, jumping from there, thank you. Current state of the Georgia ports, and this is like exactly what you talk about every day, right? And so I'm just curious, and maybe I just let you run as opposed to leading the witness, but like, talk to me about the current state of the port. I guess first and foremost, like, how does the Port of Savannah success ripple through the entire Southeastern economy? We already talked about that. But the cargo volume, how has it changed post-COVID as well? And what's driving demand today? So we talked about the Panama Canal expansion. That was 2015-16, huge spark, and then COVID. And then talk to us from COVID to today.
COVID to today, 2019, 2020, 2021 were challenging years. Not just for our port, but for every port. I hate to use this overused term, but, COVID exposed a lot of weak links in supply chain. So we learned a lot. When you visited, I told you that we maintain a 20% delta between our gap, between our actual throughput and our capacity. Our business is cyclical. Right now is our Christmas season. So our business is going up. During Christmas, season will go down a bit. Then right after Christmas, you get into Chinese New Year.
That's incredible. We're recording this July 24th. And so this is Christmas season.
Exactly. This is our Christmas season. So
Christmas in July.
So we actually have to prepare. We have to be prepared for those spikes in our business. Well, 2020, our business grew by 20%.
Uh-oh.
So that delta, bam. The very next year grew by 5%. Bam. So yes, I remember walking or driving on the terminal and just seeing containers stacked everywhere. Anywhere we could find space, we were stacking containers. And it was just a ripple effect of, warehouses were full, okay? Workers couldn't get into the warehouses to go in and offload those containers. Equipment. Chassis, the chassis are independent of the containers. So the containers were sitting on chassis. We normally need those chassis to move containers from the terminal out to, inland points, to the warehouses, to the distribution centers.
And there were other ports at the time, if I recall, I'm not going to name them by name, that had 30, 40 vessels sitting off dock and couldn't service them. And they were rerouting, correct?
They were rerouting. And we did have a few sitting on, out in the river, waiting to get up to our facility as well.
You chewed through them a lot quicker.
We chewed through them really quickly. We went through them quickly. And we did all that, and we were a berth down. You remember, I don't know if you remember, we did a berth realignment. Berth 1, kind of sat at an angle. So we straightened out that berth so that we could fit a bigger ship in there, because when it was at that angle, you couldn't put a large TEU capacity vessel there because it stuck too far out in the river. So we did all that, and we were a berth down as well.
As you were working on that.
As we were working on it as well. So what we did, we realized that the three of the most important things that we need to have to not fall into that particular type of situation again, berth capacity. So we're increasing our berth capacity now. Yard capacity, just the number of spots on the terminal that we can store and stack containers. Truck capacity, so we're adding truck lanes to our facilities as well. So weak link, the COVID exposed weak links in supply chain. So we're starting to work on those links. So 2020 was our best year ever. Okay. And this fiscal year, our fiscal years run from July to June. This will actually be our second best year ever. No, 2021 was our best year ever. 2020 we grew by 20%, and then the next year we grew by 5%. So we were within, I would say, 1% of hitting that top year. And it does not feel at all like it did back in 2020, 2021, when we were kind of forced to move that freight through that little, funnel. Well, now it's just wide open, and there's been
a lot of challenges that you guys have had to go through. And we don't need to get into every last one of them, but I mean, it's weather the storm, both from the White House, from
it does, and it takes time. We can't just flip a switch or turn a screw and just increase our capacity. Sometimes it takes years.
We're talking about to grow capacity. Deepening a river
for
25 miles.
Exactly, and even working to raise the bridge.
Tell me more about that.
Oh yeah. We're actually working with the Georgia Department of Transportation to raise that bridge by 20 feet. Again, ships are getting larger. They're getting wider. They're getting, stacking containers higher on the deck, so the container stacks are taller.
So is this a preemptive move, or are there ships right now that can't call on Savannah because they're too tall?
There are ships right now that don't call on the United States. We're working the largest vessels that call on the United States, and those vessels are about, just under 17,000 TEUs in capacity. So that's no problem. But we're talking with ocean carriers now that want to bring in 18, 20, 21,000 TEU capacity vessels. At some point in time, that's going to happen. And again, if we wait until the time that those ships are calling on the East Coast before we start that process, before we start raising the bridge, we will miss out on an opportunity.
On those 17,000 TEU ships, I don't care if you're 4 years old or if you are 50 years old. If you see one of those things coming up that river, you stop and you watch.
Exactly.
They are huge.
That's part of the charm of Savannah.
When you talk about the tourism draw, right? Which is something that I hadn't really considered as far as Savannah is concerned. But we did kind of the end of our honeymoon there as we were kind of coming back up.
Right.
And I remember watching those and just being jaw on the floor.
And that's, I could talk about Savannah all day if you didn't know. That's for what we do in economic development. Ports, you can look at any other major port, and you see the city tend to grow up around the port infrastructure, okay? We are 25 nautical miles up the river, Garden City Terminal, largest single container facility in the Western Hemisphere, over 1,500 acres. We've grown since the last time we've talked as well. And our facilities are within 6 miles of Interstate 16, which is east-west. We're within 6 miles of Interstate 95, which is north-south. And our industrial market is within a 30-mile radius. That 150 million square feet that I mentioned to you, that's within about a 30-mile radius of our facilities.
That's incredible. Okay, and then so you talked to us a little bit about the 2025 port traffic so far this year. You said either your best year or second best year?
Second, it will be the second best year.
Which is just remarkable given everything that's going on. And I think that's a huge testament to the Southeast.
It is.
Business friendly, all the things that we just talked about. To be able to weather that storm and it just be second best year ever, right? That's incredible. All right, well, let's talk about the future of the Georgia port. So you've mentioned a couple of the different projects that you guys have completed in the past, but what are the things that you're now forward looking? We talked about the bridge, but other than that, what's next up on the agenda as far as growing capacity?
Growing capacity, you hit it. Garden City Terminal. Okay, we've got a capacity. We're doing about 5.6 million TEUs there. We've got the capacity for about 7 million TEUs right now in Garden City. So we're building or renovating or updating another facility, Ocean Terminal. That's being revised and rebuilt to handle 100% containers. Okay, So what that will add is about 1.6 to 1.8 million TEUs. Okay. I like to round up, so I'll say 2 million TEUs. And we're also building a third container terminal, which is just across the river from Ocean Terminal, which we're going to call the Savannah Container Terminal.
Interesting.
We own 450 acres there that we've started the process of building a facility that will have a capacity of about 3.5 million TEUs. Okay.
So you could take this to 10, 11, 12, contextualize that. Let's say
2030 to 2032, we'll have capacity for about 12 million. In New York, New Jersey.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I knew you were going there. I saw the wheels moving. New York, New Jersey is right now at about 9 million.
So this would put you capacity-wise,
exactly.
ahead of, and then what about LA?
LA and Long Beach together, they're about 20 million.
Okay, so we got a little room to run there.
Yeah, we got a long way to go before we catch up with LA or Long Beach. But, New York, New Jersey, really good port system. But our capacity, that's one of the things that's so great about Savannah, is we have the room to build and the room to grow. So we even own other areas along the river that we may look at developing into container terminals in the future as well. And that's important for customers because they want to come through a port gateway that has the ability to grow along with their growth as well. So they plan to grow, all the retailers and manufacturers plan to grow their business, and we're able to show them that we can actually grow along with their projected business as well. One of the best testimonies that I've heard to our business and our ability in Savannah, Hamid Mogadam, you know him with Prologis. He used to be with AMB. He was the M and AMB.
Yes.
Okay. He came to our port, years ago. He was one of the first movers. And he had property, AMB, during that time when we had about 20% vacancy.
Yeah.
So they left the market, okay? Came back and they bought Duke. So they're one of the largest property owners in the Savannah market now. And when he came back and visited after that acquisition of Duke, one of the things he said that stood out to me was that, Stacy and Griff, and all of our senior staff, you guys have done exactly what you said you're going to do, and you surpassed it. That's what gave him the confidence to re-enter the Savannah market. And we do. We've got a plan. We're going to spend, $4.3 billion over the next 10 years to take our capacity, like we said, from about 7 million TEUs, 2012, 2013, to have a capacity of about 12 million TEUs through our gateway.
Well, and to contextualize the person that he's talking about right now, Prologis is now the world's largest owner of logistics properties.
Exactly.
The world's largest owner of logistics properties.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's coming straight from him. Right?
Came straight from him.
And yeah, I was
very proud that day he said that.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Rightfully so, right? Okay, so we've talked a lot about like the sticks and stones and equipment and everything like that that's on the port. Yeah. And so talk to us a little bit about the technology and some of the things that you guys are doing there. I remember, and some of these things may seem commonplace to you, but just the RFID scanners, the way that you guys are scanning containers, weighing them, like things move extremely efficiently there. But just talk to us maybe a little bit about some of the technology that you guys are implementing right now.
The technology we're implementing from a safety standpoint and an efficiency standpoint, that's what we're focusing on. We want everyone to leave the terminal, leave our facilities exactly the same way that they came in. That is our number one,
whether they're on your little bus driving around.
Yeah, there is. There's going to be a little bus driving around when we load containers onto the chassis. We're eventually going to require the driver to kind of exit the truck and go into a safe space so that we can drop it on there. So our technology is more for efficiency, moving more freight, within a certain time period, and safety of the operators and safety of our users and vendors and everyone that's associated with moving freight. So, technology is moving forward, quickly, and we want to be at the cutting edge of any type of technology that improves efficiency and helps increase safety environment.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, total sidebar here, but we all saw the bridge collapse in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. How did that impact you all? And what's kind of been the interplay there since that point? Well,
there was, pre the bridge collapse, the key bridge collapse, Baltimore was the number one port for roll-on, roll-off freight. Okay,
so which refreshing everyone is cars.
Is cars, roll on, roll off, exactly. So some of those cars were diverted to Colonel's Island. Okay, so a lot of that freight, kind of stuck and stayed in Colonel's Island, down in the Port of Brunswick. So
which rolls up to the Georgia Ports Authority.
To the Georgia Ports Authority. So That's the biggest effect that it's had. And usually when,
And they were number one prior,
they were
correct?
number one.
And now
They were number one. Now Georgia Ports is the Colonel's Island is the number one port for roll-on, roll-off freight.
So I would say that's a huge impact, right?
It is. Yeah. You've got just about every major auto brand, all the major processors utilizing our facilities, very pristine facilities. We're investing there in warehousing. We're building another berth down at Colonel's Island. So we're investing. We're making sure that remains an efficient, productive gateway for moving automobiles. And I can tell you can go down there and see some of the best looking automobiles you've ever seen in your life down there. I love taking tours and actually visiting Colonel's Island terminal.
Seeing some of these ships and also seeing them when they're offloaded, right? You go to the biggest dealership you've ever been to, and we're talking like 30x that amount of cars.
Oh yeah.
Lined up perfectly.
Yeah.
All the same exact red car as far as the eye can see.
And I'm a car guy. I like cars. So it's a treat for me to go down there.
Sure.
I mean, you've got, WWL, you've got Mercedes, you've got IEP, you've got, BMW with processing facilities there. So it's a treat. And it's all one major facility with lots of room to grow there as well. I think we've got maybe 1,200 acres there, and probably 3/4 of that is actually developed. So we've got room to build, room to grow Colonel's Island as well.
Wonderful, which attracts a lot of the automotive manufacturers to the Southeast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We've got Hyundai that recently built a manufacturing facility in Savannah. Perfect place, right there off of I-16, within about 25, 26 miles of the Garden City Terminal. Perfect for inbound parts, eventually outbound completed automobiles right there in Colonel's Island. So.
That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. All right. So ports and industrial users. So for industrial users considering port access, when should they be calling your team, and how can you help guide them with their site and facility selection?
Call us at the very start. No, we work as a team. On the economic development side, I partner with the Georgia Department of Economic Development. I partner with utilities. I partner with brokers. And we are a resource, okay? We want to help companies make good decisions. As they say, no amount of dollars is going to make a bad location a good location. So, if Savannah is not the perfect location or anywhere in the state, around the area, we'll tell you. But we just want to be a part of the team. So involve us early on. I'd like to say that because we can kind of help you with, logistics analysis, port comparisons, service profiles for the different ports, in the Southeast and in the country. We can even sometimes, working with some of our friends in the customs brokerage and freight forwarding communities to get some transit times and rates and things like that. So there are lots of different things that we can do to help companies make good decisions. Wonderful. And that's the fun part of my job, seeing a project go from just a thought or a concept to fruition, to actually going to a groundbreaking and then going to a grand opening. I love that part of my
Everyone
job.
Invites you to their groundbreakings? They should.
Yeah, with a shovel, yeah.
How many of those shovels do you have lined up in your office?
Quite a few.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. The hard hats and everything.
Hard hats, golden shovels, things like that.
Silver shovels, bronze shovels, that's wonderful. Well, putting you on the spot a little bit. So for freight pricing, I remember a container was let's say in 2018, like $3,000 to do. What's the main route that most people are indexing off of? Is it
probably Asia?
Okay. So and then during COVID times, didn't it go to like almost $30,000?
Yes.
Okay. So where is it sitting today?
It's back to what you would consider normal for Asia, Panama Canal, East Coast. All right. But Asia, we're seeing a shift in sourcing from North Asia to South Asia. All right. So you're seeing, North Asia market share go down. You're looking at diverse areas of sourcing, of manufacturing. So you're seeing Thailand pick up. You're seeing Vietnam, India, Korea. And those areas, from South Asia, Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, that freight actually flows through the Suez Canal normally, Right. But now with some geopolitical issues going on with the Suez Canal, a lot of that freight actually goes around the tip of Africa and comes into the East Coast. So that's an area that we're
I've never
watching.
thought about freight making that turn and coming to the East Coast. I've only really ever thought about freight coming through Panama.
No. There's a break point. I think it's Hong Kong and north. That it would be a Panama Canal move. All right. Anything Hong Kong south would be normally a Suez Canal move. And Suez Canal normally is an East Coast move. So more freight moving through the Suez Canal in that direction is going to benefit every port along the East Coast. And that's another thing that we're preparing for. We're watching what's going on in emerging markets to make sure that we have accurate representation in those markets to tell the port story, and working with people or, economic developers and companies, importers and exporters as well, that would be sourcing from different locations, making sure that we have adequate ocean carrier services to meet their needs.
Wonderful. All right, well, let's talk trends. So you kind of touched on it a little bit there, but the reshoring trend, and maybe we try and tap dance around this as best we can, but there's a lot going on in the world right now.
There is.
And so how is that impacting your world positively or negatively? Well, and we'll try and be as apolitical as we possibly can.
Good. Thank you for that. It is. I mean, no one has a crystal ball to really figure out exactly what's going to happen. But I can tell you, past experience with some of the tariff issues has actually been fairly positive for the Georgia ports. Again, very diverse port, so options for many different market shares to utilize our port or exist. And then, a lot of our freight is retail based, retail oriented, and we saw a lot of companies kind of front load.
Did you guys get slammed
ahead of the tariffs?
Ahead of it?
I wouldn't say slammed, but we've had very, very good months, record-setting months. It's almost like a broken record. I've heard, ports is, a broken record. Every year, every month you break a record. You're starting to sound like a broken record, you know? So January, February, March, April, May, some of our best months ever.
And those would typically be slower months, correct? Okay. So you've got Chinese New Year, which would be the front end of that.
Exactly.
Correct?
So June, July, we're starting to see a dip. But we can tell what's on the water heading our way, 6 to 8 weeks out. So we're starting to see that number actually start to creep back up, for our Christmas season, for peak season.
Okay.
So how peaky is peak season going to be this year? We're still trying to figure that out. But it's actually looking pretty good for us. Pretty good. Hopefully things will normalize here very, very shortly. But for just looking out beyond, we talk to economists, we're talking to our customers, just to make sure that they know that we are ready to handle their freight. We're well equipped, and we think we're the best option. But we're a little biased, but we do think we're the best option.
Well, you said you have 39 different ocean routes or 38 different ocean routes, right? So you're incredibly diversified. So whoever geopolitically comes up as the winner in this situation, you're already doing business.
That's what we hope.
Likely.
Exactly. That's what we hope. That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah. All right. And then what's one trend in port strategy or ocean freight right now that industrial leaders are underestimating or maybe not aware of?
We have, a lot of folks don't think about just equipment. You think about the containers, you think about the freight, but you have to have equipment, the chassis, that's a big issue. The truck drivers, that's a big issue. We've got a shared chassis pool on our terminal, okay? And we recently hired our VP of sales. He came from a chassis, sales background. So the equipment to handle the containers, the chassis that the containers sat on, you actually need an adequate supply of those around your port as well. And not just the supply, what's the condition of those chassis,
right.
So, we had to ground a lot of containers during COVID at places outside of our facility. We call them pop-up container yards. So, we had, we went in some closed down rail facilities. We worked with the railroads to reopen those, and we had to ground them, because there were no chassis available. But, people think about the containers, but all the equipment that's used to move those containers, that's something that actually is very important to consider as well with moving freight through any particular gateway. And Savannah, and I think the Southeast as a whole, is well positioned. Again, we learned a lot of things during COVID, but
Well, and actually, one thing I learned from you as it relates to that is that the cab could be owned by an owner operator, the chassis by a different company, and then the container by a separate company, and then all the inventory inside that container by a different company.
Exactly.
And that container was moved by a different company.
Yes, exactly. And what's that old saying? That's logistics.
Yeah,
you know?
it makes your head turn inside out.
Yep.
But well, wonderful. And so, I guess before we wrap up, I would love to just know, like, inside the country, who are kind of the emerging ports that you guys are keeping your eyes on, and who is it that you're trying to overtake next?
We're trying to overtake them all. You know, again, we want to be the number one port, but you have to think, you know, realistically. We want to be the best port of Savannah that we can be. And I think every port should look at, you know, their hinterland, their market, and try to be the best port that they can be to service their customers. Not necessarily compete with Savannah or be another Savannah or be another LA or be another New York. Okay. So we're definitely just trying to be the best Port of Savannah that we can be. You know, just leverage our features, benefits, and advantages.
Yep.
All right. Markets, any emerging market that we see, and things change. You know, the world changes. The only constant is change. So we keep a keen eye. Our marketing department definitely keeps us on our toes with identifying emerging markets and emerging trends. And the way that we operate, we're pretty nimble in the way that we operate. We operate our facilities, so we're definitely one of those ports that we can change our strategy as needed. So great executive staff, great board, great state, great governor. So we're in good shape.
Wonderful. Okay, internationally, let's go outside the United States.
Okay.
Have you visited any ports where you stepped onto that dock and you go, they've really got it going on here?
Many.
Okay, which would be the most impressive to you as a connoisseur, right?
Any Asian port. You know, we're moving 5.5. You got some ports out there that are moving 50 million TEUs.
So making LA Long Beach look like dwarfs.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of those Asian ports, you know, I've been to Shanghai, I've been to Ningbo, I've been to Busan. You know, over the years, visited certain ports. It's been years since I visited those ports, and, you know, they are good benchmarks. You know, we go see, you know, to a lot of other ports around the world, see what they've got going on, and what are those efficiencies, what can we actually bring back to our ports, and maybe partner with those ports in different countries. So, yes, we do actually, how do you say it? Benchmark best practices.
Yeah. And how much are you interacting with the executive teams of these ocean freight carriers? Costco
daily. Those are our direct customers.
Okay.
And that's what makes the Savannah model so successful. And other ports and even different colleges and universities coined that phrase, you know, the Savannah model. Okay. So the ocean carriers are our direct customers. You know, they pay the bills for us. You know, we charge dockage and wharfage and handling to the ocean carriers. All right. The customers of the ocean carriers are what we call the BCOs, the beneficial cargo owners. So the Wayfarers, the Targets, the Lowe's, the Home Depots, you know, they're the customer of our customer. So we actually market to both, you know, and that's one of the strengths of Savannah is that we've got 150 million square feet of industrial space with the customers of our customers. You know what I'm saying? So the ships have
locked in a
propellers.
long-term lease. They're going to be here for a while,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So if a customer wants to do business, you know, if an ocean carrier wants to do business with, you know, a warehouse operator or owner in Savannah, they're going to say, okay, you want our freight? You're going to have to put that vessel in Savannah because we've got X amount of square feet, 1 million square feet, and X amount of employees there. So it kind of, you know, it's a balancing act. We work with both.
Got it. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the business model of the Georgia Ports Authority. So
right.
I'm imagining this is owned similar to like the New York Ports Authority by Georgia, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a state entity?
This is a state entity.
It's not a Savannah entity. It's a
not
state
a Savannah entity.
And then the revenue derived from your operations, is that going directly back into the port? Is that funding Georgia? It's reinvested
back into the what we call our focus plan. We have a 10-year plan, strategic plan, and every 2 years we update that plan. So that $4.2 billion isn't just spent, you know, haphazardly, if
Right.
you would. We have a plan. We're talking to economists. We're talking to our customers. We're talking to the ocean carriers, and just to have input as far as where we should spend those dollars. So we do operate for a profit, and 100% of those profits are then reinvested back into our facilities.
That's wonderful.
All
Well,
right.
I guess before we go here, why don't you tell everyone that's listening how they get in touch with you, or the best way to get in touch with you and your team?
You can reach me. I am easy to find. S. Watson, SWATSON, at GAPORTS.com. Happy to help in any way that I can. If it's a general question or even coming to Savannah and you want to see the port, love to show it off. So we're here to help.
Yeah, I highly
Wanna be
recommend
part
if
of your
anyone
team.
listening is going to be down in Savannah, reach out to Stacy and his team and see if you can't get a port tour. No guarantees, but it was a ton of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I remember standing there. I felt like a little kid just looking around at all that equipment and the ships, you feel very small.
Hey, that's the deal closer. Man. That's what we call. That's what I call the deal closer.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Industrial Voices. Thanks to Stacy Watson for joining us.
My pleasure.
And we'll be here same time, I guess, next month.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on the Industrial Voices podcast. Appreciate you tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to this show on your preferred platform and consider sharing with a friend. And if I can be of any help to you or your team regarding your real estate, please email me or visit my website, info in the show notes.